Metabolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, welcome to the Pro Physique Code. Today we got a really special episode, something kind of little off the normal lift weights, lose body fat, do a bodybuilding show topic. We got Adam Ibrahim here, who's working on a PhD. Did I say your name right?
Ibrahim. One day you'll get it.
I mean, I butchered the crap out of it. That's not even close. I mean, I've known Adam for, I mean, it's got to be 3-4 years now.
I think it's longer than that.
Yeah, you're right.
I was at GNC when we first met. I remember.
Well, we were in the same class, maybe in undergrad, or maybe I was a grad class. I don't remember which class that was.
Undergrad for the CSCS.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Adam was at USF studying exercise science the same time I was, and you've kind of continued. I think, how many people from the program went beyond the masters?
Ooh, in our undergrad, I know most of the individuals in my undergrad program went to get their doctorate in physical therapy. That's what I originally thought I was going to do, but dropped out of that. And here I am.
Yeah, I remember Chris. Did Chris get his doctorate?
Yeah, Chris got that's that man right there.
Yeah. So my introduction into exercise science was when I hired my first coach, because you guys got to remember, I'm old. There was no exercise science degree when I was in college. You know, I graduated college in like 98, 99, my first degree. And if you went to get an exercise science degree, I'm pretty sure you were trying to be a PE teacher, which didn't really pay well and wasn't a glorified job. But when I hired my first coach off the internet, 2007, it was Lane Norton. And Lane was actually in his graduate program at University of Illinois studying he was studying like protein metabolism and the effects of protein on muscle building. So it was the first time in my life that I was like, you can actually like study this stuff, because I realized early on I had a passion for like muscle building, right? When was your like aha moment? Because you've been powerlifting and for years now. So when was your, like, how old were you? Do you remember?
Oh man, I remember my first time in the weight room was probably like middle school, but I never lifted seriously. It was just in PE class, you got into it, but I didn't really start dedicating a lot of time in the weight room for just the sake of like building my body up until I stopped playing college basketball. Always was in the weight room, always loved playing basketball. That was my main sport. Middle school, I played football, did track, soccer. But yeah, it wasn't until a year or two after I stopped playing college basketball where Chris Scott, who you just talked about, became my first coach for powerlifting, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Chris at USF, he was hosting a powerlifting meet every year, and he was doing coaching for free. Like, he was writing powerlifting programs and doing all that stuff for free. Chris was, fantastic. And I think he even might have coached Steven or they did some meets. What are your best lifts? Because I know you've had some impressive powerlifting meets.
Yeah, no, I still hold the record. I don't know if I hold it in Florida anymore, but definitely in Tennessee. My best squat is 540. My best deadlift, I just recently pulled 680, and my bench is god awful. It's like 335, but poverty bench it will always be, I think.
Listen, my first powerlifting meet went like this: squat 380, deadlift 500, bench 390. So everyone's just built different, man. Like, people are like, what's the matter with you?
Your bench was better than your squat. That's when you know you're a real bro.
No, that's called being 6'3" and built like a scarecrow. Like I don't know why I'm a good bencher. I don't know where that obviously as a young kid coming up in the gym in high school, all we did was bench. It was who can bench a plate, who can bench two plates, like so that was probably a lot of it. But even, because I had the benefit of working with some great powerlifting coaches. When I got into powerlifting, I was training with Lane at Powerhouse daily, and then Ben Esgro, Mike Zordos. I was around all these geniuses, and I had them just break down my form. And I just have very odd levers. I have kind of a long torso, so the squat bar really collapses me. Um, yeah, so it's not a good lift for me. I just biomechanically I can't get the bar low enough on my back to create the right, upward. Yeah. Lane has overcome his kind of structure. A lot of people give him shit because his squat is kind of like he collapses. But if you've ever like hit his lower back, it's like steel, dude. Like you know, that
Hmm.
dude's he's on another level. So he overcame that, and he's squatted what 663. He'll get mad at me if I say it 1 pound wrong. He'll 662. Like he'll. Um, but so the idea of making this your livelihood or your was that just a gradual thing where you got into lifting, then you started studying exercise science, wanted to be a physical therapist? Like,
Yeah, honestly, I remember entering college wanting to be a dentist for whatever reason. I couldn't tell you why.
yeah,
Um, and I
you probably
literally
saw a dentist driving a Porsche, and you're like, "Yep."
something like that, or I don't know. But I remember, going into DeUva University as a college basketball player and just getting really bored in a lot of my coursework and changing a bunch of majors, often skipping classes, doing all of the things that you're not supposed to do as a student athlete. But then going into our weight room one day, seeing this group of individuals all with the same T-shirt, having like exercise testing your prescription or something like that written on it, and then I went up to the professor and I said, "What is this?" Similar to you, like you can study this. So I made the change, and with that change came with some financial issues with like grants and stuff like that for that university. So I was like, I'm not paying to be a college athlete. You're gonna either find the funds to get me to pay or go to school for free, or I'm going home, and that didn't happen. So I ended up going home, and that's where I automatically went to USF, did exercise science. That whole time, though, thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. I wouldn't change my trajectory at all because I mean, thousands of hours observing, physical therapy in a variety of different settings. So I think that really helped me become a better personal trainer, become a better, online coach, and even a researcher now because I'm starting to see more and more nowadays, not many people are able to make these maybe simple tweaks to exercise form or variations to allow individuals to literally just do some sort of squat variation or deadlift variation. So I think a lot of that came from my PT experience and then
Yeah.
always being in the gym.
Yeah, I think, and the purpose of today's podcast, we're going to get into your research and how it's going to relate to the people listening and how maybe they're doing the wrong exercise program, maybe maybe they're performing it wrong, right? Maybe there's some better ways to do things. I think we'll talk a little bit about my experience because when we talked a little bit about your research, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those are all experiences that I've had with fitness, a fit lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, because there's been times where I've struggled to be consistent because maybe I put too much pressure on myself, maybe I overtrained, those kind of things. Um, so I'm really curious where your research has led you. That hands-on is invaluable. When I talk to, someone that I consider one of the best research-based trainers in the world is Brett Contreras. And when you spend time with Brett, I get to go to his gym all the time. Very fortunate for that. We're good friends. You see how passionate he is about athletes getting better, and he's not steadfast on any rep scheme, any exercise, anything. He's just looking for the answers. And he's got, a bunch of girls that train in his gym, and they'll all be doing one exercise, and he'll have one girl on a different machine. I go, why is she over there? He goes, because she feels it better on that machine, right? Everyone's doing barbell hip thrusts. He'll be like, she doesn't feel barbell hip thrusts. She does it on the booty builder, right? So he's very open-minded to the idea that bodies can be different, and we don't even fully understand why, right? But it's so true, and it's something you don't necessarily learn right away. You go, oh, you want a big chest, bench. Doesn't work for everybody. Some people can't bench. Same thing with me. You want big legs, squat. My legs do not grow when I squat. My butt grows, right? So like the way my leverages are, I had to learn, oh, you can't squat to build quads. You have to do other things. So um, I find that the smartest people I know, the people that have taken their education the furthest, feel like they know the least, right? They're the least confident in their answers. Whereas the people that just started working out 6 months ago and they put on some muscle, ooh, they know it all.
Yeah, I mean, we could stay on that for a little bit. I mean, your experience is limited, but that's the whole like Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you know, the less you think you actually know. And I think that's, especially getting a PhD, there's so much room we have to learn with exercise adherence specifically. We all know exercise, physical activity, movement is good for your health, mentally, physically, even socially. But damn, we're almost in 2025 and we're still in this physical inactivity epidemic. And I think that is because the research to practice gap is this large. Like Brett Contreras, he's got a PhD. He's not in academia. He's in the field. And I
Yeah.
think that's hopefully in my career, I hope I can address that where, I want to bring the practitioner along with me. I want to stay in the field. I've said this many times, you're not going to take me out of the game because I learned so much from my clients. I learned so much from our community we have from Pro Physique. I don't know everything. Science doesn't know a lot. We still have a lot of room to grow. And just to kind of stay on like your paradigm is what we call it, or your philosophy of thinking, I've really leached on to the pragmatist approach, which isn't normal in our field of exercise science. It's very positivist, right? It's these objective numbers. Your experiences don't really matter. You don't see many qualitative research papers or mixed methods where they incorporate, objective numbers and qualitative experiences. But that's what we do as coaches. We
Yeah.
see the numbers, we see the gains, but like you just said, this individual was getting stronger on the booty builder. She felt it better. No number is going to tell me that. She's vocalizing that to me. So it's like,
Right.
okay, it makes sense. I'm going to put you on that. But we don't get that depth and richness in a lot of our research, I would say.
Well, I mean, from what I've learned about research, knowing Lane, knowing Bill Campbell, research is such a challenge because it requires an extreme effort. You've got a review board that has to review your methods. And so, I mean, there are challenges. I mean, even with just doing research, exercise research, you're probably not going to have access to crazy types of equipment and things like that. I mean, I mean, how familiar are you with like Brad Schoenfeld?
No, don't get me started on him, but yeah.
I mean, he's the one of the busiest researchers that I know. Um, but I also see him as he's so focused on the research. I don't know what his practical or real world experience is. Um, so for me, it's not like when something comes out from Brad, I like go to it. I trust more. Okay, I've been doing this for 30 years myself, for 12 to 15 years as a coach. I know some things to be true that I find very commonly to be true. And now I don't hold everybody to that, but experience is a great teacher. And when you work with the great thing about working with the population of people that I work with, they do what you ask them to do. Like I consider my clients like they're in a lab. If I tell them to add 20 carbs, they add 20 carbs, right? Because I'm working with competitive bodybuilders. If I tell them do 30 minutes of cardio, they do 30. They don't do 31, they don't do 29, right? So I feel like, because when you do, my favorite research is when they put the people in the ward, like the metabolic wards, all those studies.
Mhm.
Those are the best nutritional studies because you control every variable. When you're forcing people to do diet recalls and, answer questionnaires, I mean, the reliability kind of changes. So that's the thing I love about my clientele is I get that feedback from them. And something we do with our clients on our dashboard now is the wellness scores. Um, And I'm assuming there's something like that with what you're working towards with the biographical mapping for the training.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of even talk a little bit more about, some of the research with Brad Schoenfeld. Again, what he does is muscle hypertrophy, muscle
Yeah.
strength, very, again, reliable, valid metrics of measurement of, okay, this is your growth. But how did individuals experience those training programs? We don't know. We know, again, if you exercise, you do some sort of resistance training, you're going to grow. But there's a lot of questions that I have with some of his work. But even your comment on the metabolic ward, yes, very, very valid, very quote unquote reliable, very controlled. But again, for the coaches, for the clients, I care about ecological validity, or if it's valid in real world conditions. I'm never going to, have a client be controlled in this little box. It's not how we work. So a lot of my research is maybe unique in the sense that I want it to be practical and applicable in real world settings. Because we have plenty of evidence to suggest if you're coming into the lab and you do X for 6 to 12 weeks, you're going to get better. But what happens after? Or what happens during? Sometimes we don't even know that. But yeah, I think a lot of like what you're describing of the wellness, or really trying to understand an individual and maybe their lifetime experience with exercise, physical activity, and sport, utilizing this biographical map method has been really insightful, and I think it has a lot of potential in practice and even in the research.
Well, let's dig into and kind of explain it so everyone can understand the benefit of like trying to figure out what's the best, way to keep people exercising. Because I think you touched on it a little bit. We have it's a weird place to be because we have a like obesity epidemic, right? Like obviously health epidemic, but bro, I can't even go to a gym. They're packed. Like EOS, the LA Fitness over here. Sometimes I'll go down to MI40. Sometimes I go over to Crunch. I'm an addict. Powerhouse. They're slammed with people. So I don't know if that's the culture of maybe the age group that's in there. They do seem a little bit younger. I don't know, but yeah. So let's ignore that comment because we can take that the other way. Let's talk a little bit about your research, and the what was the reason behind it? Like, what was the aha moment where you like, I need to know more about this? Because this is an original idea, right? This is not, you're not studying someone else's work.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say somebody else's work. I have a great mentor in Dr. Kelly Strohacker, in the biographical mapping method with Dr. Janica John, who's in Germany. Was very fortunate just to come across this method while I was reading some research. And I was like, man, throughout all of my years as a coach, whether it's in person or online, you hear individual stories. Yes, they kind of bounce around all over the place, but through a lot of people's conversations and hearing their experience and their rationale for doing certain things, whether it's cutting carbs to 0 or 25, or doing hours on cardio, or doing like 3 a days, or whatever the case may be, and maybe hearing like, yeah, I was able to do it for 3 months. I hit the goal weight, but now, I gained it all back and plus some, and I just can't keep it off. And I need to do what I was previously doing. I just think now having you as a coach, it'll make everything better. And I'm like, so you're hiring me to tell you what to do, what you've already done, but it didn't work long term, but you want to do it again. It was always weird to me. And this biographical mapping method, it's co-construction. So in the sense, it's just an X and a Y axis. And the X axis, we're able to literally put those meaningful points in your life revolving around exercise, sport, and physical activity. And that's part one of the interview. And then part two of the interview, we start to draw curves, and we start to see really, really interesting patterns revolving around like somebody's well-being, enjoyment, and volume of exercise. And then even sometimes what we did was separated out intensity for muscle strengthening exercise and aerobic exercise. So it allows us to learn about the individual, but not impose their story of like, okay, I know what you mean, because again, everyone's got their own perspective, their own story, and you never want to impose an individual story on them that kind of threatens their motive or even their buy-in already. But for them to come to the conclusions earlier rather than on the fly while they do a program, I think is really meaningful. So we can almost avoid some of those points of vulnerability, or it's really tough, right, to even talk it out loud, your whole story. You're going to miss things because, again, it's just out in the world. It's not like put on a piece of paper. So this is literally a piece of paper right in front of you. You can't lose your train of thought. And again, we start to see these correlations between these lines. So that's kind of like the premise of the biographical map. It's an interview that is interactive, right? You're telling me your story, we're drawing it, we're putting it on paper, and you're seeing it from the, like, again, it starts from the day you were born to the day of the interview, and you're seeing your whole story right there. And I don't think a lot of people reflect and hear their story in that way. I know we talked a little bit about before we hit the recording button, but you already started to mention pieces and parts of your story being an exerciser, but to sometimes see it and talk it out with, a professional, you start to learn about yourself in a different manner.
So when does this cross over from the realm of exercise science to psychology? Because it sounds like a lot of psychology.
Yeah, no, I think our lab is unique, where it's multidisciplinary, right? Because you can't take the physical without the mental. One thing that I say all of the time, your body hears everything your mind says, whether that's subconscious experience or conscious experience. Everything's going to be encoded. You're going to
Right.
remember things, whether it's, again, right in front of you or subconscious, feelings that you have towards something. So a lot of what yes, we're housed in kinesiology, exercise physiology specifically, but our lab is more of the exercise psychology.
Yeah, I mean, I think exercise and psychology are very commingled. I mean, I know my mental well-being is definitely tied to movement. I've learned that simply by getting up and walking for 30 minutes a day, I'm a completely different person the whole rest of the day. Like it just sets my mood up, gets me kind of, I don't know, creatively flowing. Um, and I've said many times when I'm doing a bodybuilding show, like, because for those that are listening that aren't familiar with you, when you decide to diet down for a bodybuilding show, it's kind of a very focused time. Your meals are regimented, your, exercise, your cardio, your recovery. You basically put yourself in a position where you're executing every day at a very high level. And the one thing I learned through that is like, I become a better version of myself in those times because I'm so good at time management and I'm so good at like getting things done. There's always this block of prep where I'm like, man, I am operating at my most optimal level. I'm the best dad, the best fucking bodybuilder, the best fucking the friend, everything, right? So, and then you get to the end of prep, and you energy drops. You get a little hyper focused, and you got to be like a little bit out of balance with things. But um, I'm just curious how your
What is so let's kind of go into the biographical mapping mode so people can even maybe understand how I
yeah.
would do it. You've done multiple bodybuilding shows, each one probably similar but different in the sense of your
Yeah,
age.
I mean, I did my first one at 32. I did my last one at 48. So like 16 years. I mean, from having an office job, no kids, no pets, to last year, 3 kids, 5 pets, running a business. So like I've done different phases of life, and I've done many shows in between there.
So tell me, like you said, you're at your peak. Like, tell me what that means. Like you're at your peak.
It just means that my whole day is basically I'm just getting a lot of stuff done. I feel like very accomplished every day. When it comes to the business, I'm on top of my client work. When it comes to the gym, I'm hitting PRs or I'm training well. When it comes to diet, I've got my meals planned out. My schedule is just very much kind of honed in. And just every day I wake up excited and I go to bed like feeling accomplished, for months. Um, so yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. It's just you just feel like you're executing very well.
Mm. And I think, just to kind of, from my knowledge about you and just the sport, I think what a lot of people can take away from bodybuilding in a sense is there is this phase where you're devoting on other things that to support exercise, right? Like you said, nutrition, you're getting things done at work, probably your productivity is higher, so you have more time to exercise. You're doing all of these things, you're trying to build these habits to facilitate the exercise experience. Yes, there's a carrot maybe at the end of the race, but you're devoting a time that hopefully those habits can carry over when it is, the off season or stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I to this day I will say when people are like, "Oh, bodybuilding, it's not good for you." I will say the person I was before I did my first bodybuilding show and the person I was after were completely different, and it's been an amazing positive experience for me. Um, because I learned time management. I learned self-reliance. I learned saying no when it didn't serve my purposes. I learned to be a little bit selfish with my time at a time in my life where I was probably mostly focused on making other people happy and, that kind of a thing. So, yeah, bodybuilding is a bit selfish, but it's self-serving. I mean, what other endeavor are you going to go into where you're going to look better, feel better, stop drinking? And yeah, it changed me forever.
Yeah, no, I think there's always pros and cons to a lot of the bodybuilding stuff or just like exercise and health in general. I think yeah, I think of, hearing a lot of the stories within my dissertation where again, exercise, again, it's portrayed as this positive marker, but sometimes you have this anxiety to some all of this information that is spilled out there, and we make programming more complex sometimes than it
Yeah.
needs to be with the sets, the reps, things
Yep.
of that nature. And I think hearing a lot of individual story and then having our model for person adaptive programming on a day-to-day basis, a lot of the regular exercisers said that they had permission to almost roam free and enjoy exercise. Like instead of it
Yeah.
becoming this job, it
So I
was
will
like,
say that what you're saying is something I've experienced many times as a competitive bodybuilder chasing a physique is that there is like fatigue in the process. And where I've gotten to the point where like, I've got a program, I've got my sets and reps lifted, I've got my, periodization, I've tested my 1RMs, I know my sets and reps, and I go in the gym and I know I'm supposed to get 6 sets of 5 with, 215 on the bench or whatever it is. And then some days I'm just like, I just want to go lift, man. I want to try that new machine. And sometimes you feel trapped by like what you're doing. So, but that's something that 30 years of lifting has taught me is that like, if I go to the gym one day and I'm not in the mood for incline dumbbell as my primary movement, well, then by God's green earth, I'm going to do something else. Like, but that's me now confidently knowing like, I think when you're younger, you think, oh, if I don't do something right, it's going to ruin my physique, right? You have this like pressure.
yeah, and I think that's a narrative that I've heard way more frequently, going into this biographical mapping, method and really learning and digging deep about individuals like mindset or relationship and experience with exercises. You really hear this fear or this attachment to, a certain exercise or a certain form of training, whether it's, powerlifting, CrossFit, and despite some of these negative experiences, they continuously do it, they continuously hate it, and it's this dread that they have, right? Because it's for maybe physique enhancement or it's for chasing this, this like reinforcement of, oh my gosh, you're so disciplined for doing this all of the time, where it's sometimes just needs to be for pure distraction or just the love of it, right? One of my favorite sessions that I made up with a participant who was a former college athlete, and is an exercise professional, was we literally named one of his exercise sessions Kid in the Candy Store. His plan for that session was to literally not have a plan, but to just
Right.
go in and have freaking fun. And I think sometimes we paralysis by analysis. It's like, well, we need to train to failure. Well, is that 2 reps, 3 reps? Do I need to do partial range of motions? Do I need to do all of these lengthened partials? There's so much information out there
Yeah.
where the regular exerciser can get really hung up, and then the irregular exerciser is just like, I don't even want to do it. Like, just I'm gonna stop. And we can't get people to just again explore, right? You said, Paul,
Yeah.
30 years of experience. But I think what we're trying to do within our model, a short term, maybe not even a
Yeah.
bodybuilding phase of just like, let's actually sit down and reflect pre and post exercise and learn, not objectively, but more subjectively. Like, tell me and reflect what is going on. Did you enjoy that? Did you not enjoy it? Why didn't or did you enjoy that? And let's really learn about ourselves and find what works.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would have loved to shorten the time frame of building the confidence and doing all that. You know, I'm my first experiences with going to the gym. There's a book back here called the Arnold Schwarzenegger Modern Bodybuilding Encyclopedia, and it was modern in 1980, I think. So like that book, me and my best friend would literally flip page to page and just try out the exercises, right? And this was before gyms. I was training it like in my basement or my friend's upstairs. He had a weight set. So like that for me was the fun. And I think one of the most fun periods for any person that enters like the bodybuilding or physique enhancement, whatever you call it, going in the gym and lifting a weight to change your body, there's that initial response, man. Your body is just so adaptive and it's such an exciting time. And I think the first fallout from that is when things aren't changing anymore. You know, whether it's 6 months, a year, whatever it is, you're doing the same workout and nothing's changing and you're like, why am I doing this? And that I remember clearly, that was the first time that I was like, oh, I just don't want to lift weights anymore. What's the point? Right. Luckily for me, it wouldn't last long, a couple weeks, a week or two, and I would open up a magazine and be like, oh, that's the key. I wasn't doing the Jay Cutler 26 sets for arms workout. Let's go do that. So I think if you could condense that learning curve for people that are interested in fitness, that would be huge.
Yeah, and I think that's the hope and the goal for our model. So, and I'll kind of just give everyone, the listeners, a brief overview of the model. I think a lot of people are familiar with auto-regulation, and that's just a fancy term of being responsive to your programming. So, Paul, you mentioned periodization. Periodization suggests that there's periods within your program that you're targeting hypertrophy, strength, power, or whatever the case may be, a physiological outcome. But what we do with auto-regulation is says, yes, there's these blocks of specialized attention to your program, but we need to be responsive because we're different every single day, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever the case may be. So we're responsive to what we call readiness. And that's what differentiates autoregulation and periodization. It's just you're responsive to this, what we call readiness. And it's broken down into physical, mental, and emotional states. Like emotionally, I want everyone to think of like, can you handle unpleasant feelings when you exercise, like that burning, that maybe some of the aches and pains, the heartbeats, the burning of the lungs. Can you handle that?
Right.
Um, and then the physical readiness, soreness, body integrity, and then mental. Like, I mean, we all know after a long day, sometimes we're just like depleted. We're just like, man, I don't even, it's not physically, but it's just mentally. I'm just so exhausted. So
Yeah.
being able to titrate and adjust your exercise sessions. And when I say exercise, I don't mean just going to the gym. I literally sometimes mean like right here in this room, can I get some sort of movement in? Even sometimes flexibility, because just that sometimes again that entry point of just doing something and flexibility can be
Yeah.
really powerful to just getting the movement in and maybe setting yourself up for the next day. And
Yeah.
people give a lot of hate on flexibility, but as you get older, right, something that we probably should pay a little bit more attention to. So why not build the habit, or why not at least give that individual an option of like, hey, you're feeling really shitty. Let's choose this maybe.
Yeah, I've actually had some clients, because when our clients check in with us, they use their wellness scores. And to a degree that those are readiness scores because we're checking on things like sleep and um, adherence and stress and things like that and their performance in the gym. So I'll start to notice, okay, if some numbers are declining, I'll ask them how they're doing. I've even had the technology now. The Aura Ring is the one that's the most popular, where based on your previous day, it gives you a readiness score for the day. So based on how you slept, how much activity you did, all that stuff. Um, and I got to say they're pretty accurate. Like I found that the data that you're getting, the feedback. The one thing I don't like is like, okay, you're letting a wearable technology manifest your day. Oh, it says I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired today. But what I've also noticed is that before they check their ring, they know before they check the app, they're like, "Ooh, I feel beat up today. Oh yeah, my readiness score is only a 60, right?" Or they'll say like, "Coach, my phone says or my ring says I'm about to get sick," and then they'll get sick. Like I think that technology is that something that because you're talking about feelings a lot. Are you using like data?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you actually opening that door right there. So I'm not sure if you know, Paul, like that was one of my first studies here at the University of Tennessee of investigating experiences with individuals utilizing the Oura Ring and the Whoop Band because right, this
Yeah.
readiness metric that's on this wearable is objective: heart rate variability, body temperature, sleep, heart rate variability. I think I said that already, but it puts all of these metrics,
Well,
puts it
explain when
for them.
the people are listening why heart rate variability matters because I think that's one of the most common scores.
Yeah, so heart rate variability is just it's like this tug of war within your nervous system. Your sympathetic, which is your hey, I'm ready to fight, or I'm gonna run away from whatever threat is in front of me. And your parasympathetic nervous system, what is just like, yo, I'm chilling, I'm resting, I'm digesting. Your heart rate variability is literally your variability in your heart rate. So again, a lot of people think your 60 beats per minute is just metronome of beats. That's not the case. You're going to have fluctuations within your heart rate, but heart rate variability is basically what they say is going to reflect this yin and the yang or this tug of war of your nervous system. Are you always in this heightened stress mode with your sympathetic nervous system turning on? And that would say again your heart rate variability is going to be lower, or are you in this rest, relaxation, digestive period where your parasympathetic system is predominating and again your heart rate variability will higher. But we've seen plenty of research that the incongruency of the heart rate variability and what you perceive is different. But what I really loved, and one of my findings in that paper with people, they got into the data. They started experimenting things.
Right.
It was this self-reflective tool of like I'm actually learning about myself. But again, like you said, that backfire effect, just like the weights on the scale, people stepped on it and like, oh my gosh, I'm up 5 pounds. What the fuck? Or oh my God, I have a 60 readiness score. And a lot of people tied that score to their background in academia. If it was below an 80, because they wanted to be an A+ student, it was terrible. But the Oura Ring says if you're an 80, you're okay.
Right.
But there's this gamification of, oh my God, if you get a 95, you get a crown. So again, it's really complex and it's a dangerous game sometimes to play when you're not actively engaging with your population that you're utilizing this with.
Right.
So what we try to do is, and what we're doing is very novel. So I can't make strong claims, but I think a wearable device, this is my claim today, is it could positively like speed up the learning process because you have something that's maybe reinforcing you very quickly of like I feel good, this I feel good. All right, all engines on deck. We're going. But sometimes there's this like battle, but like fuck you or ring. Like no, I feel good. You're telling me I feel like shit.
Yeah.
So there's a learning curve with it. That's what we're kind of trying to do with this monitoring with self-reflection of pre-exercise states of readiness and then post-exercise experiences of like yo, how did that actually feel, right? You have your 9 options, what we have right now of choosing. You chose one. Did you make a good choice? Would you do that again? If not, why? If yes, tell me why. Like further elaborating on these things is really important to again learn about yourself and not just take, like you said, a wearable at face validity of like, okay, it says I feel like shit, I must feel like shit, I'm just gonna chill out.
Yeah, one of my favorite training programs. I remember I had a knee injury, and I told Ben Esgro at the time. I was like, "Man, my therapist, he doesn't want me doing anything legs where I have to do a hinge. So like I could deadlift because I'm a traditional deadlifter, right? So that I could deadlift, but I couldn't do squats. I couldn't do hack squats, leg press. And he's like, well, I mean, why don't we do like a bench specialization program where I benched 3 days a week? Um, and it was the first time I ever benched 400 pounds after like a couple cycles of this. But what was fun about it was that every time I trained, I warmed up to a 1 rep max for that day. So I would warm up, 1 rep max it, which you get very good at understanding how strong you are that day. And I would get very close. And then I would train on that day a percentage of that 1 rep max. So if it was a power day, whatever. And what I noticed was like there'd be days where I'm like, oh man, I'm so beat up, I'm so tired. And I'd hit a PR on my 1 rep max warm up. I'd be like, damn. So you learn what you feel might not be correlated. And even with the Tendo device that, Lane started using when I was with him, which tracks your bar speed, oh man, that rep was so grindy, and the bar speed's like, no, that was actually very fast. So like sometimes your brain is telling you, a device is telling you, but visually, I'm sure you've been at a powerlifting meet before and been like, someone's like, oh man, that felt slow. And you're like, bro, you didn't even slow down. That was so you got way more in the tank, but it felt heavy to them. So
And I
yeah.
think let's stay on that where again I'll go back to the beginning of the podcast where a lot of our research in exercise science is just objective. It's just that velocity based. It's not integrating both qual and quant, or again, taking other people's perceptions and experiences and trying to foster and develop interventions to work in the real world. I couldn't tell you how many times or how many modes of periodization there is anymore. I think auto-regulation is falling into the same trap as periodization, where it's like flexible periodization, linear periodization, traditional periodization. They're all going against each other. They all find similar outcomes because you're doing things. And auto-regulation is like, all right, let's test velocity-based training with that
Yeah.
Tendo unit. Test that with RPE, and then let's test that with, no, we're just going to tell you what the load is. And then we go at the end of the study and we're like, shit, they all improved. Well, no shit, because everyone's doing something.
Yeah. I think that's, well, I mean, this is honestly where you go, what's right for you psychologically? What's the best method for you? And it seems like your research, that's what it's geared toward. It's geared towards almost giving people the ability to go, the best thing for me to do today is the best thing that I want to do. It's not, you know, this kind of archaic, structure of a plan. Um, and whatever allows you to, I've said this now for a few years, consistency is the most important aspect. It's not being perfect 2, 3, 4 days and then missing some days. It's literally, like I said, if I go to the gym and I feel beat up, I still go, and I'll even sometimes just go through the motions, or I'll try some new machines out. But that has really helped me the last few years with progress and consistency, is just not putting that pressure on myself that I have to do it this way. Yeah. And does your research touch on like new skills? Because I think there is also a motivation behind learning something new. Don't ever talk to a person that just started CrossFit, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
no, I think
their whole
I love what
personality.
yeah, no, I think what we try to do is empower individuals to be what I would call like the educated exerciser, to improve what, we talk about again, individualized programming, but allowing them to be empowered, allowing them to improve their competency. And we go back to, self-determination theory, right? That's the theory of, okay, how can I get people motivated and to stay motivated for just like the love of doing this, like pure enjoyment. I'm going to do this because I just love it, right? And one of the human innate needs to feel motivated is competency. And that's where I say, again, if we're actively reflecting, whether it's using the biomap, whether
Yeah.
it's reflecting pre and post exercise, and you start to learn about yourself, and then maybe you have a coach or a wearable device that reinforces or maybe challenges you to get out of the box or get away from that all or nothing mentality. Because like you said, Paul, like the name of the game is to stay in the game. Be
Yeah.
consistent. I'm not asking you to be perfect, because what perfect is going to be very different for you on a day-to-day basis. It's going to be very different for you when you have one kids or no kids to five kids and five pets. It's very different. So if I'm able to teach you that through an adaptive exercise program, and you learn the tools how to do that with the self-reflection, with the adaptiveness, and you start to put the pieces together yourself, again, going back to self-determination theory, autonomy. Nobody likes to be told what to do. You want to be guided to make your own conclusions, and then to be maybe reinforced of like, okay, I did this felt good, and it keeps happening. Right now you're really reinforcing competence. I'm starting to learn, I'm starting to understand. And that right there, I think, is the power of allowing individuals to be exercise or adherent to exercise and more educated exercisers.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that is, I think the thing that I've loved about, let's say, the sport of bodybuilding or whatever is the self-education that it's created with me. Coming from a background of sports, getting into bodybuilding for me was also an outlet. And I think really what you're trying, it sounds like what's going on with this research is that that education process could probably be shortened to ensure that people are more consistent earlier on. I think I'm probably a psychopath when it comes to fitness. Like, I'm always going to do something. Like, I started playing tennis not too long ago, and I caught myself, a couple weeks ago. I was like, what am I doing? I'm playing like 5 days a week. And I'm going to the gym bodybuilding, and I'm working 80 hours a week. Like, what am I trying to do here? Am I trying to become a professional tennis player? But that's where my mind went. I took a tennis class. A coach was like, "Hey, you're a pretty good athlete. You want to come play with us on the, this day?" I said, "Yeah." And then, "Hey, we play on Tuesdays. You want to play here?" Sure. I hired a coach. Next thing I know, I'm like, what is going on? So, like, for me, it was that excitement. It was good for my ego, because a lot of people were like, "Man, you're a really good tennis player." And I was like, "Oh, I've never done that before." Now I'm all of a sudden getting this feedback. Um, but it was also, for me, it's been fun to go out there and just push myself. You talked earlier about, like, exercising to the point where your heart hurts and your lungs hurt. I miss that. Like, I got that with basketball, and I haven't been a high level basketball player in years, but like tennis is like that. You are mentally and physically fatigued at the same time, which challenges you. Um, and so, but I had to recognize, like, hey, this isn't, I needed to pull it back to a recreational amount of tennis that allowed me to get back to my bodybuilding roots, because I was starting to miss workouts, starting to get some injuries, and I realized, like, okay, but I think it's just that nuance of, like, something new. Same thing when I started powerlifting. I was bodybuilding for years, and then Lane's like, "Hey, let's do powerlifting together." I was like, "Let's go." And then after like a year or two, I was like, "Why the hell am I doing this? Like, A, I suck at it. And B, I don't want to be in the gym for 3 hours and do 12 sets, man. I just don't."
Yeah. No, I think, Paul, what you like narrated beautifully there is, again, there's so much out there. Powerlifting,
Yeah.
tennis, basketball, like there's so much opportunity out there to be active. We just sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and what you don't know, and you don't know until you try it. So like don't be afraid.
What percent of people would you say, when you're doing this mapping, use exercise as a social activity? Like, because it creates a community. So bodybuilding, I've got my bodybuilding community, right? People that I see all the weekends and the shows. With the tennis, what I started to notice was the guys were like, "Hey, let's go get a beer. You want to watch?" And I'm like, "Oh, now I'm getting a little community of friends that do this." So I think that's valuable, like, big part of it.
Yeah, so to kind of even paint a more elaborate picture of what we do after the biographical mapping method is we start to identify three motives for their sessions. And their motive isn't, like the long term, I want to lose weight, I want to get stronger. It's like, no, what is driving you to engage in exercise right now? And I have a questionnaire that they fill out previously. I'll make like an infographic of all of this, but it's really like reinforced when I hear their story. And a lot of people aren't able to put that social perspective on exercise and are like, why was I exercising? And then when you hear him talk, like you just said, Paul, like I have this community, whether it's CrossFit, tennis, bodybuilding, and they're like, holy crap. Like I really enjoyed, being with people, right? Again, going back to
Yeah.
self-determination theory, the motive aspect of how I can keep people to do this, relatedness. And it doesn't have to be like I'm close. It's just having the old same goal, right? Same goal of playing tennis, same goal of bodybuilding or powerlifting. Like you're in that environment that is so powerful, and not many people maybe put that together. And that's where I say like the biographical map, I think could be utilized for anyone right now. I will say that because you may not know yourself as much as you think you do, especially when you tell your whole story and it's right there in front of you and you're actually forced to think about it deeply. You're probed a
How
certain
would
way.
you feel about doing one with me, and then maybe we could talk about it? I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that after talking about it, they're like, man, like I want to do it. And I think like I said, I've done it with a couple clients. I've done it two different ways where I've met with somebody one-on-one because I was like, you know what, like she had come back. This is a different story, but she had a lot of stuff going on. And I say, pause your membership right now and come back to me when life is better. And it was exercise adherence for her was tough. So I put her through this. It took about 2 hours, but man, did I learn more about her than I ever have in the past like 6 months of coaching her. And did she learn more about herself than she has ever known for the past like 32 years? And we were able to really like hone in on a mobility plan, a cardio plan, a resistance training. Like we had so much variety because of that. And she came up with it, a lot of it, because she was like, oh my God, I forgot about this and this and this. And I was just like, let's go. Like she had that immediate buy-in and she was really excited. But yeah, my phrase with the biomap now is you don't know yourself as much as you think you do.
Yeah. Sounds like a great t-shirt slogan. All right. So what phase are you at with your research, with your degree? Like, where are we at?
Yeah, so at the point of this podcast, I've completed data collection for my dissertation. So that's done. I did 24 participants that, we did the biographical map. We created a personalized program. They did it for 2 weeks, and then we interviewed them and asked them basically, how'd you like it? What improvements could we make? Because we're trying to, further refine and develop this. So I will be completing, knock on wood, my PhD at the end of May. And then we will hopefully have a big boy job, I like to call it, at a university where I'm continuously doing research like this to help individuals and coaches and stuff like that to hopefully, bridge the research to practice gap and close that gap slowly but surely.
And you're in Tennessee right now?
Currently at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Go Vols, baby.
Yeah, they're pretty solid this year. SEC is tough. All right. And so what do you think is the next phase for this research? You said you're refining it. Like what are some of the things that you guys plan to like improve on the process in the future?
Yeah, so we talked about readiness. And our lab at Tennessee has like really defined what readiness is. And I'm not sure if I should say this, but you brought Brad Schoenfeld up. He's mentioned readiness and he's cited completely wrong papers and wrong scales to measure that. So we need to do better as a field as that. And if you don't know those papers, please look up Dr. Kelly Strohacker. She's done a lot of work on readiness, or Dr. Richard Keegan. He's done a lot of readiness metrics. But we have this scale that asks multiple questions. A lot of our people said, man, why are you asking me these many questions? Just break it down to only 2 or 3 questions. So the survey is going to get refined. Eventually, the goal is to develop an app, I would say, and then developing a training manual so we can have biographical maps. This is long-term goals, but, have biographical maps be, part of the intake form for clients and trainers. But next steps, making it a longer period of the program. So maybe instead of 2 weeks, we do 4 weeks. We do an update period because a lot of people ask for that of like, hey, I was traveling.
Who are the people that are signing up for it? How are you getting the participants? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I had, flyers, social media posts, and
I think I made a post about it, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, you shared it, so I appreciate that. The first wave went so well, I didn't have to do much recruitment for the second phase. It was all word of mouth. So scientific terms of snowball sampling, people were telling other people that like, yo, you got to do this. And it was easy. Like for me to be at the level of completing data collection for a mixed method study in October was a huge burden. I don't want to call it burden, but a huge accomplishment, because a lot of people take months, and it took me 2 months to do 24 people to do individualized programming and interview these people and everything like that. So it's been a lot of fun because I feel like I'm a practitioner, but in a very scientific, pragmatic approach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, I love the blending of the psychology of finding out what makes people tick and then creating a methodology for them. I mean, that just sounds almost foolproof. Probably is foolproof. Um, yeah, I can't wait to see like what's next for you. And I'm honestly interested in doing it myself with you if we can make it work with our schedules, and then maybe just do the review on here. We do a um it would just be eye-opening to me because like you said, I think I know myself pretty well, but I'm also very open-minded to things. I don't have I'm not a I know everything type person. I'm always like, I know nothing, tell me more type of thing. Um, I figured some things out along the way, but every time I figure something out, it makes me wonder if I missed something previously that I go, why did it take me so long to figure that out? So,
Yeah, and I think that right there is the premise of like self-reflecting. Um, and maybe even another thing that we've started to figure out within this small dissertation study of, yeah, there's certain people that need more than this study, like they need those sets and reps. Some people
yeah,
they're not made for this program. And that's okay, right? Again, if we're really talking about personalization, adaptive exercise programming, some people have to get here and then you can graduate to further, adaptiveness within the session. So there's levels to this stuff, and we're really trying to figure that out. But yeah, I think the most important thing, and I've learned this within this study, is you have to be willing to engage in this. If you're going to be stubborn and go through your own similar ways, you're probably not going to maximize the potential of this program. So really
yeah.
having that buy-in, and hopefully through, the biomap process, developing the rapport and relationship with your coach or the researcher, you're willing to engage. But we had some people that were like, huh, I don't think you did this.
Yeah, I mean, I think men typically are a little bit more standoffish when it comes to, you know, being open to this stuff. I feel like women would be wide open to it. I mean, in my experience coaching, the difference between coaching men and women are much more receptive to new concepts and ideas, whereas men are like, no, I'm going to tell you what works and we're going to do it that way. So, that's why I coach women.
Yeah. But I think that the overall message is again, be willing to explore, be open-minded, is what you don't know isn't so. And the more you're able to, the more you're willing to explore new things.
Why are you in a dungeon? What do they got going on over there at University of Tennessee? They put you in the
That-
basement?
that's where we're at right now, man.
What is it as bad as the exercise science department at USF?
No comment.
So funny story, and then we'll end the podcast here. So Lauren Conlon was actually a student at USF getting her master's degree in exercise science. And so she only ever went to the PED building. I don't like calling it the PED building because that's physique exercise development. Was that what it stands for? But um, so the PED building at USF is one of the older facilities there. And so I remember like a year or two after she graduated, we went back. I think, did Dr. Campbell invite us to speak at something? And it was at the Student Center, that beautiful building. Oh, I think it was a bodybuilding show. They did like a little bodybuilding show in there. And so she and I were like working together at that time. And I said, well, yeah, let's go. So we drive over to there. She gets out, we walk in this building. She's like, what is this? I was like, what do you mean? This is the student center. There's like food over here. There's people hanging out over here. There's games. She's like, I never knew they had this. I'm like, Lauren, it's literally like a half a mile from where you went to school every day for 2 years. She's like, I just literally drove to school and left. She didn't know that USF has like one of the most probably technologically advanced campuses. I mean, with their obviously the medical school drives a lot of that, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's just the nature of being in grad school. You know your building and you don't really venture out. I've been fortunate at the University of Tennessee and some of the friends and people that I've met here were going to football games, basketball games, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And actually seeing campus, you're just like, damn, we really got the shit under the stick here at the exercise science building, man.
That's how it was at USF too. I remember first time I came in there and sat in a desk, I was like, man, I don't even fit in these desks. Like, what do we steal these from middle school kids?
Yep.
Good times. All right, man. Well, thank you for updating us on your research. And is there anything we can do to help? Like,
Shoot.
from the perspective of anybody listening, how do we keep up with like what's going on? Or what if there's somebody listening that wants to get involved and it's like, you know what, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. Is that
Yeah,
something you have to do in person with you right now?
yeah, and again, just to make sure it's clear, data collection is over, so nobody unfortunately
Okay.
could participate in my dissertation study. But definitely follow me on Instagram. Make sure you follow Dr. Kelly Strohacker on Instagram. I mean, she's my mentor. She's the one that has taught me so much. Dr. Janica John, I know she's not on Instagram, but she's the one that trained me on biographical mapping, and that method. But yeah, I mean, shameless plug, I'm doing a survey validation study. I need about 50 more people to do that. So if you're interested, shoot me an email or a DM on Instagram.
Well, just also if you're on can you Instagram tag me on that so so it shows up in my story?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. But yeah, I think a lot of it, will be, if people are interested, right, we'll have a defense and presentation of this work. If they want to be involved in that, they can do that. But a lot of this stuff is, share it, get the word out on this stuff, because not many people are doing stuff like this. But the more we can get this, shared and talked about, I think it'd be really helpful for us to move this forward, especially getting practitioners like yourself on board with like, yo, this idea sounds really, really cool. How can we continue to refine it and stuff like that?
Yep. I'll be honest, when I first started going back to school, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to school, get a PhD, do some research. And then when I saw how hard it is to do research, I said, yeah, I'm just going to be a coach. So kudos to you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm lucky to be on our team, man. And I appreciate, our relationship still for sure.
Goes both ways. All right, guys. Well, listen, follow Adam on Instagram. What's your Instagram, Adam?
It's at the Coach AI.
The Coach AI. He's artificial intelligence. He's not real. That chin hair is not real.
Everything's fake. I got a pixelated Pokemon shirt on. That's what we're all about.
I mean, that is OG Pokemon. That is not even. That's for
That's the
like
Game Boy, not even the Game
that's
Boy
like
Color, just the
like
OG.
32-bit graphics. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.